Espero que os guste. Elise, are you here? Hello?
Yeah, I'm here. Can you see me?
Yes, Elise. Hi.
Perfect.
So, your turn.
Amazing, thank you.
Okay.
My Spanish is very shaky, but I think that was quite the introduction.
Okay. You understand something? Okay.
No, más o menos.
Okay. Okay. Yeah.
Thank you very much. All right. Just gonna share. Hopefully everyone can see this. Hello, LABASAD, and I guess YouTube. I guess this is live for everyone to see. Thanks for having me. I'm Elise, as Carlos said. I am originally from the US. I lived half my life in Australia. I've lived and worked in Italy, and now I'm based here in London. I'm currently design director at DesignStudio in London. We're an agency, although that word's a bit weird to describe what we do. We are a design studio. We've been around for about 10 years, and we've worked with some really incredible, organizations and businesses across the world, both local and kind of international. We've got offices in London, Sydney, New York, and San Francisco. We're really well known for working with some really big brands in particular. Some you may know, like Premier League, Deliveroo, Airbnb, the classics. And that's kind of what everyone always asks us when we kind of get invited to do talks or whatever. Everyone kind of always wants to hear about this project. They want to hear about Airbnb. But today I'm not going to do that. Rather than focus on quite an old project now, actually, I wanted to talk to you about a much more recent project. We've done a lot of really amazing work since the success of Airbnb, and certainly kind of after I joined. I wasn't part of Airbnb, back then. And also, I really want to take this chance to kind of talk a little bit about our process and a bit more about our approach and our sort of attitude towards what we do and every project that we kind of bring that to. And also, actually, while writing this talk, I think I kind of realized it's actually a big part of what's kind of always been part of my personal approach and career path as a designer. And that is this. It's this idea of like rewriting the brief and kind of rarely taking anything on kind of face value when it first kind of comes through the door. It's this kind of spirit of like challenging the brief every time from the get-go and kind of going, what's the real problem here? What's the real challenge that needs to be solved? And the magic kind of key to that is this starting point, which is a really kind of key part of how we approach things at DesignStudio. It's this kind of admission that we know nothing. We might know some things. We definitely have a lot of experience, but, often these projects kind of come through the door and they're in industries that we know nothing about, with customers that we know nothing about. So it's this kind of really kind of humble approach and kind of going, let's start from scratch. We don't know anything. And let's really get to the heart of what that real problem is and use that knowledge to write, effectively what is the real brief. Like I said, I think looking back, like on my career so far, I've realized it's actually always been part of my approach and kind of how I've kind of gotten to where I've gotten to. So before going into kind of exactly how we do it at DesignStudio and kind of this recent project of OLX, which I'll take you through, just a little bit of background on me. So I kind of fell into, I guess, branding and agency life. I grew up in California, as Carlos said, and I moved to Australia when I was a teenager. This was the vibe. It still is the vibe. There's lots of things in Australia that can kill you, but it's a really incredible place. And I sort of feel quite excited and proud to call it home. I ended up studying design in Sydney because of that move. Finished high school, started university in Sydney. That's where I studied design at like a really tiny little design college. And from there, I kind of always thought I'd end up doing editorial design, typography. Like that was my kind of like main passion. Like I was super stoked on kind of printed stuff and a lot more kind of like analog design. And I worked in various kind of boutique studios, doing a lot of cultural, hospitality-based projects. A lot of work that was like really quite pure graphic design, actually, like making really beautiful things, lots of printed material, lots of kind of signage and wayfinding and really kind of interesting little, interior pieces and, really kind of amazing collaborations with different kind of disciplines. But I hit this point where I needed a change. I kind of had been working in these little boutique studios for a little while, and I was like, design probably is a bit broader than what I've experienced. And at the time, I don't think I kind of fully realized what that feeling was. But I realized I'd gotten quite comfortable, like I said, and I kind of felt like I needed to put myself back in this position of like uncertainty and learning and kind of that spirit of like knowing nothing, to kind of broaden my understanding of design and kind of explore other sides of design than just the pure analog print-based graphic design. And I kind of always been inspired by the work of this designer who's one of my design heroes, this guy called Tibor Kalman, who famously kind of wrote that everything is an experiment. And he kind of had this really amazing, quite wild belief that you should only ever do something once and then move on and try something else, which is quite cool. And, this idea that everything's an experiment like really resonated with me. You should kind of always put yourself into this position of uncertainty and kind of always learn something new. He's also really famous for helping start this incredible magazine, which I'm sure many of you have seen, called Colors. Again, which kind of had that same spirit of like reinvention and kind of reinventing itself every issue based on like hundreds of different themes, which was also like a real inspiration point for me. And that led me to kind of discovering this mysterious place called Fabrica, which is a residency for creative people from around the world, or it was anyway, it's kind of changed now. But it was a place really known for its kind of experimental approach and crazy creative output. And Tibor Kalman was kind of one of the originators of this place. And it's this incredible kind of, mashup of talented people from around the world, from all different design disciplines, not just graphic design, but like writers, artists, musicians, like all different kind of creative people kind of mushed together and working on different projects. And I thought, fuck it, I'll apply for it and see what happens. It was a complete long shot at the time. I was like, this is never going to happen. But I got in, and it was kind of this weird moment in my life where I was like, all right, like this is something new and like completely uncertain, this idea of moving it all the way across the world. But I did it, and I sold everything I owned, packed up a single suitcase and moved to Italy. And it's just north of Venice. It's a tiny little town called Treviso. And it's like this amazing little bubble. It was kind of like part Italian holiday, part sort of like artist residency, part design agency, part whatever you kind of want to make it during your time there. And I pretty much did everything except for traditional graphic design, which is what I've been used to. I got to experiment with experience design, object design, interaction design, social activations, all sorts of community-based projects. And I was completely out of my depth every single day. I was like, what the fuck am I doing here? This is crazy. I don't know what I'm doing. But I think I look back and, that was obviously an amazing experience for me and kind of really taught me that design can be much broader than what I thought it was. And it taught me kind of what design can do for a lot of different businesses and organizations and different people. So again, kind of that uncertainty was something I kind of really embraced. And eventually my scholarship ended. So I wanted to stay in Europe and decided to move to London. And again, another huge moment of uncertainty in my life. I didn't have a job. I didn't know anyone in London. But again, it was that chance to kind of go start again, chance to learn, try something new. I started working at DesignStudio pretty much my first week in London. It was for a last-minute freelance gig. It was kind of this phone call that I got from a recruitment agency and said, DesignStudio needs some help on a quick brief. Are you free tomorrow? This was like 4:00 in the afternoon on a Thursday. They needed me to come in for a couple of days. So I went in, and I never thought I'd be there 4 years later. But I can proudly say I've stayed for, obviously the incredible work, the incredible team. But it's also the vibe, the attitude, this sort of refreshing approach to brand projects, which I hadn't really kind of been that familiar with before coming to DesignStudio. Brand projects to kind of this scale. And like I was saying at the beginning, DesignStudio, we never take a brief without challenging it and without starting from this exact mindset. this spirit of we know nothing. And I find that really, really refreshing, and it really resonates with my love for kind of uncertainty as well. So that's kind of why I stuck around. And that sort of rings true for kind of every project that we do. So on that note, I want to give you a bit of an example of this project. This is not the logo we designed, although it's pretty cool, actually. This funny little computer guy. This is a recent project that launched at DesignStudio. I say recent, but actually we worked on it for almost 3 years. Project called OLX. You may have never heard of it. Some of you may have heard of it. But it is one of the world's biggest classifieds platforms, kind of like a Gumtree or a Craigslist. And worldwide, it's got more users per month than Instagram, which is pretty wild. So it's absolutely massive. I had never heard of it when it came to DesignStudio when they first came to us. But then we kind of realized exactly how massive it really was. It exists in 40 different countries across South America, Eastern Europe, Asia, Africa, the Middle East, all sorts of places. And with classifieds is a pretty weird, interesting world. There's a pretty low benchmark, actually, because it lives in this world. It's, it's dated, pure HTML. There's a lot of crap on there. A lot of people selling weird, strange things. A lot of trust issues, lots of scams, lots of fraud. And it's just this sort of weird kind of world that's sort of stuck in the past. And OLX kind of fit within that world at the time, a little bit more bright, a little more colorful than Craigslist. But they had kind of historically had this very organic growth strategy. As they expanded the business across the world, their sort of headquarters is in Argentina, and then they kind of expanded out from there, entering lots of different markets across the world, kind of targeting these different markets where they thought they could have, real impact, and kind of acquired these different classifieds businesses that maybe already existed, and kind of just adopted OLX and became this thing. And because of that organic kind of growth strategy, every market was sort of doing its own thing with the brand. Different logos, different messages, different colors, different photography styles, different illustration, different digital experiences, that the platform worked and behaved completely differently in every single market. There was zero consistency across the world. And, OLX's internal teams were not talking to each other at all. No collaboration across the company at all. So it was just a completely disparate brand. And there was a real key kind of moment when they came to us where they were feeling also really big, lots of pressure from some competition, not other classifieds businesses, because in most cases they're the dominant player in their market, but particularly from big players like Amazon, selling new stuff for really cheap and really kind of dominating in the kind of logistics space. And then on the other side, they were feeling the squeeze from Facebook Marketplace, recently kind of launching Marketplace in a lot of places, which was kind of really honing in on community selling. And I think our first kind of gut reaction, particularly looking at the kind of the brand as it was and looking at how disparate it was, I think it's quite easy as designers to kind of look at it and go, that's cool, I know exactly what they need, clean them up, make it consistent, make it slick, make it fresh. And that was effectively their kind of original brief to us. They were like, just help us stand out, make it modern, make it consistent, easy. But I mean, how could our approach, with the spirit of we know nothing, it's like, how could we possibly think that we could create a consistent brand for 40 different countries, 40 different cultures without actually going there and really understanding how people interact with this platform and with secondhand stuff in general? What's the sort of thinking around secondhand, buying and selling secondhand, this whole concept of classifieds, what's the kind of culture around it in all these different parts of the world? And what is that universal spirit at the heart of OLX? If we are trying to make something consistent for 40 different countries, how do we avoid making it, just this kind of homogenous, bland tech thing that doesn't actually resonate with anyone in particular? So that's kind of where we start, right? So we kind of go, we know nothing. We need to figure this out. What do people really think of OLX? What really needs to change here? What's the real brief that we've got? We know we can do that baseline. We know we can make it look good. We know we can make it slicker and better. But what's the real brief? So we did just that. And we started by kind of going around the world. And at DesignStudio, we try to start every project like this. This was a particularly fun one because obviously there was lots of international travel involved and going to really fun places like Buenos Aires, Kiev, and Delhi. 3 kind of key markets for OLX, to really talk to real people. We not only talked to all of OLX's kind of internal teams, all the different departments within the business, held lots of different workshops and things to really understand how people in the company felt, what was the real spirit, what was the real kind of attitude. And there was like this real amazing kind of like humor and passion and energy that people had for secondhand stuff and this kind of new approach to consumption, which was really cool. But also really importantly, we talked to customers. We actually went out walking around these different cities and actually just interviewed random strangers and talk to them about how they feel about buying and selling secondhand stuff online and how they felt about OLX. That was super crucial. So we couldn't even begin to kind of make any assumptions about what that would be. So like I said, we went to these kind of 3 key markets. And for the purpose of kind of time, I'll oversimplify some of the stuff that we heard. But we got to, like I said, we got to know kind of like what real people kind of felt about OLX and how it truly added value to their lives, how people felt when they really used it. People were kind of like quite proud in some cases. They're quite happy when things, sales happen. They feel quite smart. They got a bit of extra cash. People do feel like OLX is there to kind of give them some value in their everyday life. But then there was some real negative stuff. We kind of got to some of the good stuff. We're like, yeah, cool. Okay, let's be real. Like, what's the real feeling here? And I'm just going to go straight in. We basically discovered that there were some major issues that people had around secondhand stuff in general. And this was pretty universal. We kind of managed to find these kind of 4 key things that people really felt strongly about. Not about OLX particularly, but about secondhand stuff in general. In these markets, these stigmas were predominantly to do with kind of, trust and uncertainty. And that's to do with kind of scammers and fraud. But then there's also some themes like shame. A lot of people are quite defensive when they say they bought something secondhand. You don't want your neighbors to see you buying secondhand because it means that, people think that there's this kind of attachment of, your inability to kind of afford anything else if you are buying or selling secondhand. There's a lot of kind of disgust. There's this kind of cultural sort of disgust around it. There's a great expression I think it was in Ukraine, where it translated to, buying secondhand is like using somebody else's toothbrush. And also just the kind of the hassle of it, buying new is easier. And it's just, these platforms don't make it easy for you to kind of buy and sell quickly and seamlessly and kind of, they don't make it easy. So it's always a bit of a hassle. It's much easier just to kind of find what you're looking for new. And so what was really interesting here was like the stigmas around secondhand were so strong and it was so different from how we had kind of assumed it from the get-go. We were kind of comparing it to, say, for example, wealthier countries like the UK or Norway even, where secondhand is actually seen as like really cool. It's become really cool and it's become this kind of badge of pride that people have when they buy something secondhand. They're like, yeah, I got it secondhand. Like, isn't that awesome? But in these countries, in these markets, that wasn't the case. And there was these massive hang-ups that people had about it. So the problem that we needed to really solve here wasn't necessarily even to do with the brand. This was an oversimplification of what we shared back to kind of OLX when we presented this in. We sort of said, yes, you've got new stuff on your platform. You've also got services, you've got jobs, you've got houses, you've got cars, and your classified's pretty broad. But because you deal primarily in secondhand stuff, OLX, unfortunately, and all of the categories, is becoming synonymous with all that stigma. It was being tarred with the same brush, and we had to kind of fix that. Loads of people were kind of attaching all that kind of negativity to the brand and kind of saying, people equate OLX to secondhand and therefore equate it to being bad quality, not desirable, really dodgy, scary, it's going to rip them off, messy, it's gross. So there was a lot of stuff we had to kind of unpack there. But we understood then that we had to use OLX to shift a bigger perception, not only of the brand, and lifting it out of this kind of dated past and this kind of computer with legs as a logo, we had to also help shift this kind of negative perception around secondhand stuff and really frame it as something desirable. And it wasn't kind of enough just to make it cool. We kind of realized that it wasn't just as simple as kind of copying what was happening in, Western Europe, let's say, where secondhand is kind of cool automatically, and it's just kind of a cultural thing where it's a bit more accepted. It wasn't enough. We had to kind of align it with something else that people were going to be kind of drawn to. And we had to highlight a quality that's actually true to secondhand goods. It's a smarter option. No matter how you slice it, it's just smarter. It's smarter than buying new for lots of reasons. It's smarter for the planet, for obvious reasons, less waste, circular economy. It's smarter for the local economy. It keeps money in the local community, which is a really good thing, especially with big outside players like Amazon coming in and kind of dominating. And it's smarter for your wallet, whether you're a buyer or a seller. You're getting a bit of extra cash if you're clearing out your wardrobe, or you're, saving a bit of money on something that you found secondhand rather than buying it new. So in general, this was a really true thing that we could kind of start to own around secondhand and kind of really realign OLX and reposition it with this at the kind of core of it. So we built out a strategic kind of mission as such, a kind of reason for OLX to exist. And we kind of defined this, we exist to empower everyone to make smart choices. And that's really, truly kind of what the brand became built on. This idea of smart choices. We wanted to kind of define this emotional space that could really set OLX apart from Amazon or Facebook. If Amazon's all about kind of convenience and cheaper prices, Facebook's all about kind of community, OLX is all about making kind of smarter choices for your everyday life. And we, like I said before, I think, we needed to find this kind of sentiment that could be universal, not to kind of wash over everything and make it really homogenous, but something that could actually be a sentiment that could be kind of felt universally, but it's flexible enough for every market to kind of nuance it for their particular audiences, something that would resonate in their local market. That feeling of making a smart choice is actually something that all of us feel. It's pride. We've done something awesome, we nailed it, that's cool. But the articulation, the kind of colloquialization of that can be really different. The expression of that can be different in many, many languages and many, many cultures. In the Philippines, there's this expression called yes yaman, which I think translates to, I might be getting this totally wrong, but I think it translates to, find your little golden treasure. But it's that same sentiment, that same excitement and pride that people feel when they've done something cool, when they've done something smart. Likewise, lekker bezig in Dutch, or, we had some different ones for Polish, and it was more just a kind of permission for every market to flex this sentiment and find the version that kind of worked for their local market. And then once we kind of established that, we found that really worked well and kind of resonated with all the OLX teams around the world. There was alignment kind of within the entire organization, which was really quite special to find. And then we kind of then turned our attention to the visual identity. That was the next step. And we really wanted to do this, really. Like, OLX should become this like visual shorthand for making smart choices. So that's kind of what we explored. Like, we actually explored so many different visual concepts for this. There's a lot of different ways you could bring this to life. We explored lots of like weird stuff, really fun stuff, really crazy like face tracking stuff. This idea that the logos of face tracking, kind of like affirmation of making smart choices, like mirroring users' reactions when they've kind of gotten that feeling, that pride and that excitement of doing something really smart for themselves. Or maybe it's a giant button that you press to make a choice. It's kind of shifting between the O and the X, and it's these two buttons that you're always choosing between. So we did explore lots of things, and it was a lot of fun, this process. But ultimately, kind of at its simplest, it was about this. It's about choices, A or B, and helping people kind of decide between them. Deciding whether something in your house that you might see as trash is somebody else's treasure. Do you want to find something that's unique and one-off and out of this world, or do you want to kind of, wait on Amazon for something that's out of stock? Do you want to kind of join this amazing kind of movement of people around the world that are kind of making smarter choices for themselves and kind of, getting involved with buying and selling secondhand? or do you want to kind of join the queue and be like everyone else? So that was the kind of story at the heart of it, really, and we kind of then built the logo around that. You know, we've got this kind of thing in the middle. We've got O and we've got X. We've got these two choices, and then we've got L in the middle, this sort of maybe. And then we brought them together to form the logo. And there were a lot of iterations of this, but eventually we kind of ended on this one. And it really, you know, the reason it's gotten some interesting kind of criticism on things like, you know, under consideration, etc., where people are like, why isn't it symmetrical? You know, there was some real kind of specific design decisions made around retaining the kind of the quirkiness and the quirky spirit of the previous logo. You know, everything was a bit all over the place. Nothing was quite the same size. There was no symmetry. And it kind of echoes, you know, this sort of spirit of classifieds and secondhand stuff. You know, it's got some quirks. It's not perfect. And it's, you know, full of these kind of one-off things that are a bit weird and kind of make you look again. And it's also quite bold, you know, it's a bit off. It's not another sort of minimal slick tech brand. It's got some personality to it. And then we brought it to life with motion as well. So it's, you know, this logo that's kind of the O and the X and the L in the middle that are kind of always shifting and transitioning between these two sides, these two choices, and are always kind of getting you to kind of think again and look again. And then we built out that visual system based on that same idea. You know, the O, the L, and the X became those graphic devices that kind of helped us flex and slide around and kind of contain content. You know, we really wanted to kind of retain the bright, energetic spirit of the previous OLX. And especially when we went around the world and kind of met all the internal teams from different markets, like, again, another universal kind of trait was that they're super, super energetic, really fired up about secondhand, lots of energy, just really passionate for what they do. And, you know, a lot of that kind of humor as well kind of was coming through. We had to kind of bring that through. Lots of passion, lots of fun. The other thing we looked at was, you know, tone of voice. We built out kind of like a really comprehensive tone of voice guidelines for them and a marketing playbook to kind of just help all their teams kind of really capture the spirit of it, but then transliterate it for their kind of local market. You know, and the art direction as well had to be really reflective of this kind of really smart community of people getting involved with OLX. So it kind of it edged on the sort of side of bold, you know, being really almost brash in its confidence. It had this sort of slight element of being really smug. You know, we wanted to show people that we're really proud and, you know, proud feeling of, you know, having been part of this really smart, savvy thing. We built a kind of custom typeface for them. It's based on platform, but we fully customized it with these kind of randomized O and X glyphs that randomly kind of appear as you type with it. And it's intended to kind of just be used in 16, you know, it had to work in 16 different languages, so it needed full language support. It needed to be recognizable and really distinctive in any language it was put in, you know, so that no matter what language it was in, no matter what market was using it, it was always going to look and feel like OLX. So it's really fun. It's got, I think, 5 different O's and 5 different X's that kind of randomly generate as you type it out. So you get lots of really fun combinations of letters and kind of characters throughout the headlines that are used. It was pretty extensive. You know, we went, you know, down the road of defining lots of motion principles for them. Everything was all about this kind of this pulsing and the sliding of this O and the X and the L, just kind of pushing around and flexing between choices. I hope that's not too glitchy, the animation. And even bringing it into something like signage and wayfinding, like it was a really robust system. It was really important that we use these elements to like unite the teams wherever they are in the world. So whether, you know, you go to head office in Buenos Aires or whether you go to, you know, some of the smaller offices in, you know, Romania, Bulgaria, wherever, you're going to feel welcome. You're going to feel like it's OLX and kind of part of this bigger thing. Now, what we kind of did when we kind of got to the kind of creation of that visual identity, we kind of wrapped up that nice project and it worked really well. But then we were kind of like, there's a bit of a missing piece of this puzzle, which is the product. And the OLX brand effectively, yes, it's marketing, yes, it's comms, but effectively it's its product, right? It's its digital platform, it's its apps, it's, you know, desktop version of the platform. The brand is the product. And the sentiment was, how could they go out there with this confident, really empowering new brand when their platform looked like this? How could we truly live up to the promise that we're helping everybody make smart choices when the platform isn't even mobile responsive? So we jumped back in, this time with a really digital focus, purely with the kind of spending a lot of time with the digital teams particularly, and really working on how do we actually create this digital vision and this sort of digital future, really, this future benchmark that really aligns with the brand vision and where OLX as a business is heading in the future. And it was a really long process, but we worked on defining a series of these kind of digital design principles to translate the spirit of smart choices and all that kind of excitement and energy and passion, humor, and lots of that kind of personality, that confidence. How do we bring that into every part of the digital experience? We did a lot of prototyping, a lot of experimenting, a lot of playing around. And eventually we kind of, I'm skipping a lot of the process here, but this is kind of the final result. So we basically built an incredible kind of component library, UI toolkit, as well as lots of like new feature ideas. We kind of looked at this thing which is called Sassy Search, which is this really super smart search tool that helps you find what you're looking for. We introduced perfectly timed kind of pieces of curated content, improved tools for both buyers and sellers to make the buying and selling experience absolutely amazing. Enhanced kind of chat functionality, localized messaging and illustrations with local teams to really kind of like feel empowered to make it their own. And it was super cool. Yeah, this really solid kind of UI toolkit. Oh, can see some things playing there. These kind of animated illustrations, lots of kind of motion principles, even kind of structural principles, demonstrating to them how this thing can kind of flex. Oh, it looks frozen. All right, I'm just gonna jump back in here. Hopefully this works. All right. As I was saying, I think we kind of just made it super comprehensive for them to really kind of give them all the tools they needed. Libraries of icons, other UI elements, just like really kind of building it out and making sure they had every single tool they needed to kind of really make every aspect of the digital experience super smart for all their users. And we didn't stop there. We then helped them spread this kind of great thinking across the business. I'm not sure if this video is playing, but basically we built them this super cool kind of brand hub, which not only kind of was a central place to kind of house the brand and digital guidelines, articles, kind of thought pieces. We introduced kind of polling to help everyone across the business be able to kind of vote on things like smart changes for the business. We built a kind of layout generator to really kind of give everybody at OLX this real understanding of what smart choices means for them in their role, in their everyday. It wasn't enough to just kind of hand it over to the digital teams and the marketing teams to kind of adopt this new brand. We had to make sure that everyone across OLX really understood what this idea of smart choices kind of meant for them. My favorite part of that was this little avatar generator. I say little, it was actually humongous. And it was this tool that kind of lived within this kind of brand hub. And it, invited everybody who works at OLX to create an avatar of themselves in the unique style of OLX. And I think there's like thousands of possible combinations, hairstyles, colors, eyes, bodies. And it's really representative of the diversity of people across the business, which is super cool. And it really helped everybody kind of feel part of this bigger thing, which was not something that existed before. And the hub was full of like really exciting, kind of really clever ideas, smart ideas to kind of get them started and to help them launch the new OLX in every market. We came up with some really fun, like smart merch ideas, like, you know, instead of buying new corporate merchandise, like let's use a bunch of, you know, pin badges and patches to kind of brand real secondhand items that each market kind of might go and find on OLX in their country. And it's been a real pleasure to kind of see them roll this out across the world. It started kind of slowly in India, Pakistan, South Africa. They started launching in a few kind of key countries, and now they're starting to roll it out in almost all the markets. And it's had really great reception so far. This is a little screen recording of, I downloaded the OLX Romania app the other day. And it's not fully changed. It's not fully, you know, to the benchmark that we kind of helped create together, but it's really exciting to kind of see them starting to implement some of the new digital elements that we kind of worked on together. And it's already feeling like super, super awesome, super amazing. And the last thing I'm gonna share is one of the new campaigns that India put out when they launched the new brand. And it was super cool to kind of see how they really captured the spirit of smart choices and made it their own. In India, they kind of launched this campaign with the expression "set high," which roughly translates to like this idea of like nailed it. So again, that sentiment of like when you've done something really awesome, done something smart, you've nailed it. And I just love to see how they took it and ran with it. And it feels really on point with the brand, with the energy and the humor that we kind of captured with the new brand. So I'll just play this. Hopefully it works.
मम्मी के घर आने से पहले लिविंग रूम सेट है। जो चाहे बेचो, जो चाहे खरीदो with the all new OLX. OLX set है।
So that's it, really. I guess in summary, you know, it was a really amazing project, and I think, you know, we really couldn't have done it without that full understanding of what the real problem was, and starting with that sentiment of we know nothing, we need to figure out what the real brief is here, and it's so much more than just the logo and a slick-looking brand. I think like it's a real kind of incredible attitude towards consumption, and this incredible kind of ambition to help everyone around the world kind of make these smarter choices around consumption. I guess that's it. Thanks very much.
It was great. Thank you again for your talk. It was very, very, very inspiring. And this project is amazing because it's still working, no? This project is not finished.
Yeah, it's still going.
It's still going, no? In different, because you have to apply all of the brand in the different countries, no? Yeah, about this project, it wasn't because the logo is a logo, no? But then the brand narrative is amazing because you create a lot of concept about how it's talking this brand and the tone and everything. No, it's really, 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 really nice. Listen, people have some. Well, you have a lot of fans here. It's Elise is great. Is the best, and a lot of things that.
Oh no.
You have a lot of fans around here. No, I have one question, and then I'm gonna ask you some questions that the people are doing now. But at the first, when you say we know nothing, you know, this is very interesting to say we know nothing, but you have an opinion about everything. So how do you do this? How do you put abstract and you know and say, okay, I know nothing? How do you do that?
Yeah, it's a good question. I think it's a little bit about ego. I think designers have egos.
Oh yeah, big one.
We like to think that like we can solve anything, and we can. But I think it's about, you know, yes, we come with lots of opinions, and I think the opinions are very, really valid, and often also gut instinct goes a long way. So you might have sort of an immediate opinion about something, and even after a little bit of small research, yes, you can have some kind of ideas and initial thoughts, and that's still really valid. But I think it's also just about having the open mind to go, until I talk to more people and until I ask more questions and until I really let myself kind of immerse in this thing for a while, I'm not going to kind of try to solve it. I think it's just an attitude, really. I think it's just about kind of saying, I'm going to park my ego for a minute and just kind of learn as much as I can. And sometimes you come back to those initial opinions and they're still really valid. But I just think it's super important just to like have that open mind, you know, like what else could this be?
Okay. More questions. Daisy is asking what project are you most proud about?
At DesignStudio.
Yeah.
In my life or at DesignStudio?
No, I think in your life. Well, she doesn't say exactly, but your life.
It's a hard question.
Okay, DesignStudio.
I actually think, no, I genuinely think OLX is one of them, because like I said at the end of it, I think it was a really fun project. I really liked the result. I'm really happy that we were able to create such impact with such a massive organization. But I also think, for me, sustainability is a really big thing that I care about, and I hope a lot of us do. And for me, that was a really amazing opportunity to work with a company that is working towards helping shift some of those massive attitudes towards consumption. You know, if they can really help shift like the attitudes of so many people around the world to buy and sell more secondhand, we're going to be in a much better place. So I think, you know, that's pretty cool. And for that reason, I'm quite proud of it.
And you think it's a really tendency, the circular economy? It's going to grow.
What's that, sorry?
The circular economy, you know, the sustainability and these kind of companies, the second hand, the change companies and everything.
I hope so. I really hope so. I think so. I think, you know, I'm optimistic, and I think there's a lot of people who are starting to make changes in their own personal habits of consumption. And I just think it's going to happen more and more.
Yeah, me too.
I hope so. Fingers crossed.
More questions. Nicolas is a student, a graphic design student, and he's asking what he has to do to come to work, like Intel or something like that in DesignStudio.
Send me an email.
Okay.
I think, you know, we look for people. We're always kind of, doors are always open. So yeah, definitely get in touch with us, and we're always interested in meeting, you know, interesting people. Yeah. You have people from Spain in your agency in design? Not at the moment, but we did. He left and kind of went to kind of pursue some of his own projects actually. But he was from Barcelona, I think. And more questions. What is we are talking about what is the project that you are more proud of, but what is the project you are least proud of? Oh wow, least proud of. That's a really hard one. I don't know. I mean, I think there's projects that you do over the course of your career where they don't make it into your portfolio, right? Yeah. There's always projects that are just, you know, they're a job, and you still do them the best you can, but they're not the ones you're going to shout about. I don't know if I can name one in particular, to be honest. Okay. It was embarrassing question. Matt is asking you, at least apart from graphic design, what things in life inspires you to make amazing work? He's one of your fans. Say that again. So what things in life? You know, apart from graphic design, what things in life inspires you? Wow. To work. Yeah. I do a lot of things. I make ceramics. I do a lot of ceramic work. So I make pottery. I have I'm part of a shared studio space in London. which is really cool. So it's a nice kind of part-time thing. For me, that's really important to kind of do something with my hands and make things physically. I actually get really inspired by physical objects, I would say, more than like printed graphic design stuff now. I watch a lot of films, lots and lots of films. I do a lot of cooking. I get really inspired by food, actually, weirdly.
It's relaxing or inspiring?
Both.
Nice. Okay, more questions. What do you think, for Martin is asking you, what do you think about digital versus old school design?
Digital versus?
Yeah, about digital or versus old school thinking of design. You know, about the new, all, you know, the example, I think it means that this project that you show us, it's all digital, the logo is digital, everything is digital, no? And in comparison with the old school, more graphic, more print,
Yeah.
can imagine the question is going this way.
I mean, I think it just depends on the audience, depends on the context of the project, really. I think the touch points of this brand really needed to be digital because it's an online classifieds platform. So the nature of the project meant that it had to reach people digitally predominantly. But yeah, I think, you know,
And what do you like?
I think it's going to become the only way that design is seen.
What do you like more?
What do I like? I do miss doing printed stuff, to be honest. Every so often, I'm like, I would love to do a book or something printed. I like both. I think they both have like really interesting possibilities. Like I love animation. I love, you know, weird like digital experiments. Like I love, you know, I love the challenges of doing kind of, you know, product design, digital product design, even though it's a bit of a pain in the ass sometimes, but it's, you know, it's really interesting.
But you don't think in general that the people think that digital is like a low level than when something is print, or you know what I mean? When you create something digital, it's not you know, it's not so appreciate like if you create in the print stuff, you know, like
I see. I think it's just it's a very different thing. I don't know what you mean. I think the way I feel about it is like, it's like even if something's printed, if something's digital, you still have to consider how somebody's going to use it. At the end of the day, it's all user experience design. Like you're always thinking about the interaction and always thinking about how somebody's going to feel when they use that thing or interact with that thing. So in that sense, I think it's quite equal. It presents just a different set of challenges. And especially with digital design, I actually think it's even more challenging. It's like, how do you evoke something sensory or something emotional through a screen? Versus, you know, when you have something that's tactile and you have other things that you can play with, other levers that you can pull emotionally. I think that it's different. I think they're equal in terms of importance and, you know,
true.
You know, value.
Okay. Kevin is asking, what do you like the most in the brand creation process?
In the brand creation process?
Yeah, travel, no?
Yeah, travel for sure. Travel is really fun. Getting to go and see all these different places. The learning part is the kind of most fun. It's because it's the time when you don't have any pressure of answering questions. You can just ask and you can learn, and you can almost be a student again and just, you know, learn everything. But then apart from that, my other favorite part of the process is the kind of concepts, you know, the visual concepts where you get to experiment and try to find different ways of expressing things, you know, doing all those fun experiments like the face tracking stuff and, you know, turning the logo into like a little person, you know, that sort of stuff is really fun. And you get to just have some real kind of weird playtime with it. It's good.
Yeah, it looks a very nice project that you showed today. Very, yeah. Well, we're gonna go with the last question. I asked him if how is the a regular day in the studio. So you are in the different projects. You are in only one project.
Yeah. So as a design director, my role, I'm across multiple projects at once with different teams. Typically around 2 to 3 projects is pretty normal. There was one point where I was doing lots more than that, and it was a bit crazy, but you know, it fluctuates. It depends on how busy we are as a kind of whole studio. But yeah, multiple projects at once with different teams. And the project teams are made up of designers, strategists, copywriters, yeah, different specialists when we need, you know, when we kind of want to work with them. So sometimes we bring in like 3D animators to our team, excuse me, and yeah, different kind of specialists from time to time. Pretty small.
In the project that you showed today, how many people was working, was still working in
Yeah, that was a creative director, that was myself, design director, and I think it was 2 designers, 2 kind of core designers across the whole thing. We had a strategist and a copywriter, and that was it. So about 6 people in total, 6, 7 people. Yeah.
I thought they were more because the project is so big, so
Yeah.
it works.
It wasn't the same exact team all the way through for all the different pieces of the puzzle. For the digital project, we had a kind of slightly different team with more kind of digital focus. So the team definitely grew at that point. Yeah.
Great. So thanks again, Elise.
My pleasure.
It was really great. It was very inspiring. Enjoyed a lot. So and I tell you, the last day that we talked, you are invited here in Barcelona. So
Thank you.
when you can, not when you want, when you can.
Yeah, I'm definitely gonna go.
Okay.
For sure, as soon as I can get on a plane.
Yeah.
Thank you so much. It's been great.
Thanks. Yeah. See ya. Bye-bye. Bye.
Bye.